I would like to welcome everyone that is here today and especially thank the media and the South African Police Service for attending today. I would like to introduce Dr. Frans Cronje. I don't think he needs any form of formal introduction from the Institute for Race Relations, and he will start for us.
Ian, thank you. Good morning to everyone. In a society where the state is unable to fulfill that role effectively, it's the very basis of a modern democratic society. What happens when that role cannot be fulfilled as successfully as it should be? The context that we work in is that we're a very violent society. Approximately 500,000 people have been murdered in South Africa in the last 20 years. It's equivalent to what you would find in some of the world's most deadly war zones. So we start with two sets of data. We're an extraordinarily dangerous society despite the improvements, and we know from the data, this specific study was done by Stats South Africa. We know that South Africans don't have confidence in the law enforcement structures that should be the very basis, that monopoly on violence that's handed to the state in a democratic society. What are the options open to us? If we privatize law enforcement, a vast global experiment in doing that. The private security industry has increased by size almost fivefold, 500%, while the size of the police has increased in 50%. The next set of solutions we looked at is the lawlessness that comes with mob policing and vigilante violence. It's obviously not a solution that could be endorsed. We've been aware for some time of neighbourhood watch schemes around the world. The key weakness in neighbourhood watch schemes is their initial successes. They work where the citizens and community are willing to invest their time in the scheme. As soon as they see the results, they say, we're safe again, and it's difficult to get the patrollers out at night, and crime levels pick up again. So they become victims of their own successes. Vigilantism has by default become a solution in poor communities, and therefore the urgent need to come up with something better. Our recommendations, of which there are 6 of them, are the following. Channel the vigilante rage, which is potentially a positive asset to the country. These are people who are so fed up with their circumstances, they're actually prepared to go out, take the risk and do something to fix their own community. Channel that in a more humane direction, possibly using the type of model that Ian is going to talk to you about. Use that model to try and build coalitions between township and suburban law and order activists. Once those structures have been built, go and see the private security providers in a specific area, and on terms that the local community is satisfied with, bring them in as equal partners. They have resources, networks, finances. They're already out there doing the job. Once that has happened, go and see the police and bring the police in as partners. This isn't something that any one or two of the 3 groups can successfully do on their own.
On the morning of the 15th of September, Mrs. Pula left her house, leaving her small son, he's 14 years old, a young boy, at home alone. Later on the afternoon, when the father, or the uncle rather, returned home, he found the boy lying dead on the couch. He had been raped and murdered for absolutely no reason. Now, it's unfortunate that we don't hear about these cases as much as we would like to, because I think those are the stories we need to make sure are told in the country, because that boy shouldn't just be a figure or a number. On that same day, the community and go out and they start protesting in the streets of Masiphumelele. They hear that the police have already made an arrest for the murder, but no one is able to say whether it is the correct person that was arrested as the suspect for the crime that had been committed. The community carried on. They found the police van with the suspect in the back. They chased the 2 police officers away. There was more than 150 people protesting. They chased them away. They beat the suspect to death, put him back in the van and set the van alight. We need to train South Africans. We need to make sure that through the police, through the private firms, and obviously through civil rights organizations like ourselves and others, we need to show communities what their rights are, what they are allowed to do, what is the legal framework for them to act upon. If they should find a criminal, are they allowed to arrest him? And if so, what do they do during that arrest? How do they approach the criminal? How do they speak to the criminal? And when are they allowed to act? where a lot of people say, let's form a group that patrols, but then when they find a suspect, one person in that group of 20 patrollers might beat the specific suspect. Then an assault case gets opened and the wheel turns, and eventually the patrollers who originally had a positive approach, or they wanted to do something good for the community, have now turned into the criminals themselves. So we need to make sure how we manage that, how we can train communities to act effectively. We will try and cover that risk as far as we possibly can. So we have designed a form of risk cover for patrollers to do that. And I'm very proud of that because I'm sure it's one of the only ones in South Africa. So that's the risk part. Then the infrastructure part. There needs to be communication structures. Communities need to be able to speak to each other. So how do we make sure that this system works properly? I think the first part is we need community intelligence groups. We need to make sure that we use the intelligence that comes in from communities. We need to form memorandums of understanding or partnerships with the police, not only on national and provincial level, but obviously on ground level. We need to go and sit and tell them how we can make sure that there is a limited liability to them and that we can work together in fighting crime. In Elliot, we saw when the farmers came together to patrol, the Taxi Association formed a partnership with them to start working together. The police welcomed it. The next example I would like to use is Bloemfontein. In Bloemfontein, we started about 2 years ago with three to six guys that started patrolling the streets. Now we sit there with 8 to 9 neighborhood watches throughout the town. The community themselves have raised funds in cooperation with private security firms, and they've actually bought patrol vehicles to use. They work alongside not only with the informal areas around the city, but also they perform community operations with the police in the city, and they've started setting an example as how we can safeguard cities, not only rural areas, but cities throughout South Africa. And I can guarantee you once again that if we start following these two examples of Bloemfontein, we will see a drop in crime, because you don't have any other choice but to then develop a successful intelligence, community intelligence driven structure in that specific area.